Welcome everybody. I'm Wes Lyons. Most of you will know Tim Tebow. Tommy leads the family office and the Tim Tebow group. And Scott Donnell it was part of founding the Clapham Accelerator, this group of for-profit, nonprofit, and government that's coming together to meet twice a year to build a dense network around what the Lord's doing in combating trafficking. So really appreciate your leadership in this, Scott, and the catalytic force that you brought to this.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, thanks everybody for joining. I think, look, just that you're here is a good first step. We got a lot of people that care, a lot more people than you'd think. This is a big issue in the world. And, there's a reason why we've sort of dedicated much of our lives to this. And we care deeply about kids. We care about families. And we care about, I think, the most precious people on the planet. In my world, and I think, Tim, I'll let you speak for yourself in a second, but like on my side of things, I've spent my career helping millions of families and kids, okay? Helping train them, teach financial literacy, teach family legacy, helping with the school system, building all these different companies. And I have just personally seen that I think one of the greatest attacks in our world right now is on our kids. It's in our families, on the nuclear family, on children, what they see, what they watch, what they're exposed to. There's evil in the world and it's real. And it's not until you get into something like this where you see it face to face. And so, we just came together and said, we got to do something, and we got to do something that is more strategic than what the other side is doing. Okay. It's one thing to just be like, oh, I hope that this can solve, send money somewhere, send a check. I really hope someone's doing something to help this, right? It's another thing altogether to say, you know what? Collectively, this group has built billions of dollars of technology. We've impacted countless, probably over 250 million people around the world with our different companies using technology, using scalable, elegant, viral technology. And you know what? We can be more coordinated, and we can be more efficient at fighting this evil scourge on the planet, this trafficking scourge. And so that's really what led us to this collaboration. Is how do we bring best in class people with a heart of gold that are building some of the most the most groundbreaking technology. It's not just innovative, it's groundbreaking technology, and bring them together to collaborate and build systems that not only thrive as a business, but it can be sustainable, and it can impact exponentially countless millions of people by becoming sustainable. So that's why this isn't just a nonprofit here, like, hey, everyone, just let's do a rubber chicken dinner, help us with the cause. No, we need to be coordinated, and we need to be strategic and tactical. And that is what we have spent the last several years setting up. And Wes and Vip are going to get into a little bit more of this in a while. But I think it's really important to kind of set the stage. But this is why I jumped in. My life in technology, I very clearly saw how this can be built with the right people, the right entities that can really scale and make a huge dent in this evil, a massive dent, saving millions upon millions of children. And we have come a long ways, gentlemen. Like, it's crazy to see where we're at already, just in the first little bit. So, yeah, Tim, I'm going to hand it over to you to share for a minute, just sort of where you're at and how you got into this, and why it's so important to your heart.
Thanks for sharing your heart, and I love Scott's heart. One of the first times that we had a chance to interact, I love it so much. I got the chance to speak for a mutual friend of ours, and sharing some different things about fighting against this evil, which is human trafficking and child exploitation. And Scott comes up to me afterwards, and he's like, all right, tell me all of it. Tell me every little bit, because I really believe that if we come together, that we can solve this problem. And I was like, this dude is either like a genius or a little crazy. And I've come to find out that he's definitely more of the genius.
Both.
All right. And but I love his heart, because when it was really when his eyes were open to a certain extent, or the next level of being open, man, he has just been all in, and he has wept over those that weep. He has mourned over those that are mourning. He has hurt because those are hurting. And I believe that's something that we all should be doing. And Scott's right that we have to work together and we have to be strategic. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the whole knocking the whole nonprofit thing, but hey, I get it. But we all do have to be on one team. Why is that so important? Because we all get to be on God's team. And one of my favorite things that my pastor always says is, once we've accepted Jesus and we've been rescued by what he's done on the cross for us, we're now a part of the rescue team. But do we act? Do we think? Do we live? Do we pray like we're on the rescue team? Because what does a team do? A team has the same mission. It has the same mindset. It has the same heartbeat. That's what the good teams do. They don't just put on the same jersey. A lot of people put on the same jersey, but aren't really on the same team. But what if we really we're on the same team? What if we said, okay, you know what? This is the game plan. This is the goal. This is the mission. This is what winning looks like. And it was all for the sake of those that are hurting, all for the sake of those that are starving for hope. And what if we really did work together strategically in all of these ways, where we were bringing together engineers and inventors and investors and companies and nonprofits and all of these different people from different areas. And we said, hey, it's everything for the mission, because ultimately it's not really about the credit. What if we really did that? What could the impact be? And then God let me and Tommy connect, and that was such a God story blessing. And then he let us connect with Wes and Vip and Wade and the whole team from Eagle. And we're trying to bring as many people onto this team. It's not Scott's, it's not mine, it's not any of ours. It's God's, and it's for hurting people, period, end of story. And I really believe that at our heart, for us to move the needle to where it could be, it's got to be the mission above the credit, because ultimately there's only one person that deserves credit, and that's King Jesus. But also why this is so important is because people with the goal to do evil, I hate to say this, guys, but I have to. Many times they work together better than people with the goal to do good. But guys, when you see behind the curtains of the way that people with the goal to do evil are encouraging one another, walking beside one another, telling people the exact rules, regulations that take place from county to county, from zip code to zip code, you would be appalled. And yet they're working together better than we are. And that can't be the case. Why? Because we ultimately know that we're on the winning team. God's already won for us. And we get to fight from victory, not for victory. And we get to do it for who he loves and cherishes more than anything, and that's people. And we know that our God's near to the brokenhearted, and so would we be too. But you see, this is about heart. It's about strategy. It's about mindset, but it's about all of that coming together. And yes, it is about ROI. And some of you are looking and say, I thought this was about investment. It is about investment. It is about ROI. And that's really important. And we need to have that conversation, because ROI matters. And we hope that there's a return on investment. But so much more, Han, I would encourage you to invest in a different ROI. That would be a return on impact. And most importantly, I would encourage you to invest in what I believe is the most important ROI. That's a return. That's a rescuing of image bearers. And I believe together that maybe we could have all three. Maybe it could be a return on investment. Maybe it could be a return on impact, but also it could be a rescuing of image bearers. And we literally mean through the technologies, through the rescues, through the relationships, through all of these different ways. That's why we're inviting people to be a part of this. That's why we want and need people to be a part of this. So maybe it could be a return on investment. We're hoping so and believing so. It could be a return on impact. But man, more than anything, I want you to hear our heart. It is to be a rescuing of image bearers. That lives would be rescued, brought from some of the darkest evil in the world to experiencing true light and faith, hope, and love, which they so desperately deserve. That's our heart. That's why we're asking you to be a part of this. That's why we want to rally people, because to really move the needle, we need an army of people that are willing to engage, willing to invest, willing to endure, willing to be a part of it, so that that boy and girl no longer has to be a part of this.
Wow, that gets me fired up. Ah, that's
I want to cheer and cry at the same time. So, yes. Yes and amen, Tim. Well said, man.
And I think one of the things we want to share with everyone is tonight we are hoping to share about the Eagle Freedom Fund. The whole focus is to invest in technology companies that are directly fighting human trafficking and child exploitation. And so it is a fund we are so honored and grateful to be part of. And so for some of you, if you already know, yes, I want to learn more, I want to participate in this fund, all you need to do in the chat is just say, put me in.
Coach.
And put me in, coach.
Put me in, coach.
In, coach.
Put me in,
And
coach.
that's going to tell VIP to reach out to you, get you the investor materials so that you can actually do your deep dive or get a call scheduled or just go ahead and invest. And if that's all you needed to hear and you want to get back to your evening, you're not being rude to do that. Just put that in the chat. That lets VIP and team know exactly what needs to happen. Otherwise, we're going to keep moving, tell you more about some of the companies we're actually invested in, tell you some of the stories of the rescues that have already happened as a result of those companies, and give you a little more detail about how the fund actually operates and how Eagle Freedom expects to generate a return on investment for investors. This isn't a charity. This is an investment.
Right.
And so we really like this team. We respect the work that they've done consistently. So this isn't a theoretical thing. The team at Eagle has an incredible track record. That's part of what made it so easy for us to get behind the mission. So we'll go through that. And then at the very end, if we have some time, we'll give some time for Q&A.
But so excited for y'all to hear about some of these companies and the due diligence that has taken place, the heart behind some of the founders and why and what they've created and how it can move the needle and how it's already moved the needle and how that can be used as a business and to make impact.
Absolutely. Yeah, hey, one more thing, and then I think Wes, I think you lay into this, and I'm gonna tee you up, Wes, for a second.
all right.
Because
Go for it.
it's for everyone listening. Wes is okay. If you don't have a clear operator that is doing the best due diligence, the best strategy work, spending 12 hours a day having the conversations with law enforcement, with lobbyists, with the nonprofits, with the tech companies, he has the background of understanding how to put these things together. Mm-hmm. Like Tim and Tommy and I can't do anything without VIP and Wes. Like they are the backbone. Do they spend their life speaking to stages of thousands of people like Tim and me to a lesser degree than Tim? Like we know how to share heart. We know how to share those things. But what we want to get into with you guys some of today is the clarity of this strategy. Okay. And that is very important. Okay. And I will say this, Tommy and Tim, I don't want to speak for you, but we've put investments between the three of us separately. We've done a ton of investments, a lot of money into a lot of deals. And we've been around the block. We've made mistakes. We've had successes. We've seen a lot. And so, not only do we beat this up to think through this strategically, but I would never give money to somebody that didn't have Wes's skill set, right? The way you think about deployment, the way you think about scalable return. I look at this as a football game. Sorry, Tim, I do. If we're going to go up against a $500 billion industry, okay, you better have a heck of a quarterback, running back, wide receivers, and a line that is like 400 pounds a pop. Okay. And a huge bench behind them. So we look at this from a tactical, strategic standpoint. We are not fighting against dumb people. We are fighting against very strategic evil. And we believe that God is showing where to go and how to set this up. And we've seen some incredible early successes. And so Wes gets to walk you through that. But the last thing I want to say about money for a second, Tim and I and Tommy, we believe that God owns everything. Like if you really want to think about your money for a second, God owns it all. And we are called to be stewards. Okay. So when I put money into things, I look at it as like, all right, where am I stewarding this? And we think that with this type of stewardship, it gets to become exponential over time and redeployed. Scalable technologies that can gain revenue in non-trafficking industry that are directly fighting for this is a brilliant model to be able to allow us to scale the impact nationwide. It's what gives us a huge fighting chance against a giant gorilla. All right. And we believe we have that strategy. And I'm really, really excited about this. So I teach kids all the time. Like, we've helped 7 million kids and families. Do you know what I say about money, guys? Money is not your identity, right? God is. Jesus gives you your identity. You have no money, you're one of the most valuable things ever created in the whole world. But what is money, right? It's not good or bad. If it's bad, it's like a poverty mindset. That's not what the Bible says. The Bible says the love of money is the root of evil, right? So if you just focus all on money with everything and you close your hands around it, then it becomes identity. It becomes achievement and status and a keeping up with the Joneses. You have got to view money as like an open hand thing that you are stewarding. And all money is, it's just a store of value. And you vote with your money. You vote with the things you buy and the things you give to and the things you invest in. You are voting your values. That's all money is at the end of the day. And obviously I'm talking to a bunch of 7-year-olds because that's what I do for a living. But that's what I want people to think about is like, we want to vote with our money. Like, put the store of value that you've been able to accumulate and God's given you to vote with it. And if it can be a great return, I don't know if I'm allowed to give percentages. Really excited about that too. But you're voting on your values. All right. That's the point of what Wes gets to dive into here today. And I know you all want him. Some of you wanted him to go in like to level 10 and go super deep on every technical thing. The other half of you will get a headache if he does that. So we have to like dance this middle ground together and share like the clear strategy, but keep it in the simplest terms we can. Okay. So Tim, did you want to say something? And then we'll give it to Wes.
No, I love it. I appreciate you saying all of that, Scott. And I'm excited. And I want Wes to share some of the game plan and strategy, but also maybe a little bit of his heart and why he's even feels equipped and ready for this fight from the strategic side and from the heart posture side, if you don't mind.
Yeah. You guys are amazing. Really appreciate and thankful that it isn't just me at Eagle. There's an amazing team, just for clarity. But kind of going back to the beginning of why we got into this, to answer your question, for me, it started on the battlefield in the Philippines, where I got the chance to be the officer in charge of the U.S. detachment to the Philippines. And there we saw children used in combat by ISIS. ISIS is an evil organization, and they were using thousands of children in combat. And that was the moment when the evil broke into my life in a way that it wouldn't leave, if that makes sense. I kind of picture that everybody kind of has this veil, and there's a moment when it comes in and doesn't leave, if that makes sense. And I came home proud of the role we got to play with the Filipino military there, but also just hurting that and realizing that the world was a lot darker than I thought it was. And that I love C.S. Lewis's quote that every square inch of this planet is claimed by Satan and counterclaimed by God. And it's just the sense that there truly is evil in the world, and there truly is there's a war that we're living inside of, really came alive coming home from that. And as impact investors, I was actually a reservist at that time. So I already was a financial planner. We had already launched private equity funds. And we were asking, like, what does it mean for the kingdom of God to come through a venture capital fund? And so we started asking, is there a role to play in combating human trafficking from a for-profit investment perspective? And we landed resoundingly on yes, primarily because as we dug in, we found out about the size and scope of this issue. Like, you could probably riff much more eloquently than I, but we saw these numbers, like 50 million folks stuck in slavery. Just parts of this are really growing. I mean, you can comment on
$150 billion business annually and growing.
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers are staggering.
We're talking about multi-billion-dollar crime syndicates that are built to buy and sell humans in the worst possible way. And as we saw the breadth of this, we realized like, oh wow, we need capitalism to step in. That it's actually doesn't at all. I think it actually elevates the nonprofit game and elevates the government game. And it's really that for-profit needs to step in and play their part. It's not that there's like an either or, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
That there needs to be this like we talk about building billion-dollar enterprises that can go toe-to-toe with these multi-billion-dollar crime syndicates. And so we just went, wow, this has to be, there's a role for profit to play, if that makes sense.
I don't think it just makes sense. I think it is imperative because government has to play its role. Law enforcement has to play its role. The church has to play their role. Nonprofits have to play their role. Investors, givers, senders have to play their role. But also, we forget so many times that business for profit can also have a lot of leverage out there in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And they can use that leverage for good. And it's so important if they are willing to use it for good, if they're willing to leverage it, if the engineers, if the tech, if the entrepreneurs are willing to leverage that for good, there can be so much advantage, so much help, so much support that can be used from that. And I think sometimes we just underestimate just how big of a difference that company could make.
Yeah, absolutely. Exciting. But the question that people always come up with is if they start to go with us on that conversation, is they start going, okay, wait a second. How do you make money combating human trafficking? You might be wondering that.
So Wes, tell us.
The way, and Vip, you might share the slide. It's helpful to just go through. We've identified $3 billion markets that these companies are building into. There's about 25 companies that we're either talking to or we've already invested in, and they're all building into these three markets. One is the regulatory pressure. So this is governments like the EU corporate directive that came out on December 14th of last year, saying every company's got to look into their supply chain and find slavery and eliminate it. At its simplest, it's who actually made the shirt on my shoulders, and was it an adult paid a fair wage? It's actually a very complex problem, and we're not the only ones betting big on this. Forbes came out today with an article that said 15 to 20% of all venture capital, so call it roughly 50 billion a year, is being spent on supply chain transparency. So we are like, this is an incredible opportunity for us to say, okay, $50 billion this year are going to go towards supply chain transparency. How do we leverage that to actually decimate there's 26 million people in labor trafficking today. That are either pulling cobalt out of the ground with their hands, or in the chocolate industry or the fishing industry. Those are a few of the ones that are really terrible. We have a chance to be this kind of like prophetic example of what it can be when you're actually building up from solving those problems. Because at its worst, that money, like $1.15 billion went into Exeger to try to build these top-down look into your supply chain solutions. There's also tons of tech getting built on the ground all over the world by people that are really trying to solve modern day slavery. And if you start connecting the dots to the billions that are getting spent and these technologies that are from like fisheries in Asia to technology that's literally being put into the manufacturing centers in China and India, you have a $50 billion opportunity that can either go right on by us, or we can take a swing at it and say we could actually see millions of people come out of slavery. The second one is the strategic litigators. This is
real quick, Wes. Sorry, real quick. Just because I know I got a couple of comments and texts. Slavery is slavery for people listening to this, right? Some of it is labor slavery. Some of it is sex slavery. These two go so closely hand in hand, which is why it's so high on our list. Like if you follow the Bitcoin prices and the S&P 500 prices, they're always hand in hand, up and down. It's the exact same thing with labor slavery and anti-trafficking in the sex slavery world. Okay, so for those listening in, this is why combating this is such a big deal, is keeping people responsible for where things are coming from all throughout the supply chain. Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure that note because I was getting messages.
No, that's a really great point because they're not the same thing. I didn't realize before I came into human trafficking that there's labor trafficking on one element, and then there's sex trafficking on another, and there's forced marriages. There's so many elements to trafficking and child exploitation. But those are the two biggest bins, with the third being child exploitation that we're looking at. The next huge opportunity is the American courtrooms. Our lawyers are doing an incredible job. They're holding big business, JP Morgan, accountable. JP Morgan had to pay $290 million for being the bank to Jeffrey Epstein's sex ring. There are 40 hotels in court, hotel brands in court over human trafficking allegations. The first one settled out of court for $29 million. These are entire industries that are on alert that they have to find solutions. Like the Polaris Project says that 80% of trafficking in the US, of the roughly million people in trafficking in the US, that 80% of that is happening in hotels. That might be slightly high, but like a huge portion of it is happening in hotels. It's a lot. It's a lot. But we've got every one of those brands is on alert that they need solutions. We literally get to build companies into that. And then the third is the political and social pressure, where TikTok's testifying they'll spend $2 billion to protect their kids. This got real for us, where Ashley Chapman, USA Today Woman of the Year, who's in our portfolio, has built a technology to help communities mobilize and coordinate around human trafficking. And a far left and a far right senator came together and wrote $150 million in that will get voted on in September. So it got very real in that's a brand new company that's about to get, if that passes, and it's a very purple issue, has $150 million heading its way, and would be an incredible investment. But that's the beauty of these investments, is we're hoping that it'll grow from a financial perspective, but that also means 50 states in the union are all coordinating on how they combat human trafficking.
If I could jump in and add to that, what I feel like you're saying, Wes, is the door has been opened a little bit. And now we have the chance, with it being unlocked and open a little bit, to try to kick it in and see what difference we could make in all of these areas. And those are just a few of the areas, but such important areas that the door's been open, maybe for such a time as this, maybe for such a team as this, maybe for such a teammate as you for something like this, where that door's open. And so maybe we could use those open doors to be able to have a return on investment. But man, the impact we could have at the same time, to me, is just so exciting.
Yeah, the scale potential gets I think one of the things that's special when you get to be in the room for one of these gatherings where all the entrepreneurs hang out together, what we keep hearing, and I know you can testify to this too, Scott, is the sense that this could change is palpable in the room. Like the sense that everybody sees, oh, that door just went ajar, and there's a lot of people that want to bust it wide open.
Yeah.
That is what's so exciting about it.
Will you mind telling us about some of the different investments, some of the different companies that we've been able to invest in, and see some of these leaders try to step up and create some incredible products? Because that always gets me excited when it goes from the theory and strategy to then this is one way we're getting it done.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe I'll start with Darkwatch, and then you could share a story about Deja Vu. Does that sound good? Darkwatch is led by an amazing man named Noel, and he mapped 32,000 brothels across the United States run by 200 crime organizations. This is an overhead shot of my city, Dallas, and 714 brothels across our city. A few of them closed, many of them open. And I had to grieve my way through this map when I realized, because every one of these locations represents people being sold, and you can extrapolate out just the massive amount of suffering that is represented by this map. But you might ask, why? How do you get this map? If you look on the right side of this Star Studio, you see 109 reviews. This is 109 reviews where the artificial intelligence is saying, this is somebody testifying, this is the sex act that I paid for, and this is what I thought of it. This is smoking gun evidence that Star Studio is not an upstanding institution that its landlord wants to have on site, that its bank wants to have on site, which gets to how is this a business? To some extent, it became a business when those courtroom victories started happening in the last couple of years. Because when JP Morgan pays $290 million for being the bank to Jeffrey Epstein's sex ring, every bank across the United States goes, oh, am I banking the next one? Oh, there's probably not that many. If they dig in, they go, there's tens of thousands of these. I have to have a way to figure out which of my customers are these issues. And so then there's all the connective data that behind Star Studio. It's not just the name Star Studio. It's their phone number, it's their email, it's their Zelle handler, it's their PayPal handle. It's the ability for banks, hotels, and businesses to do an audit of their customers and say, who needs debanked? Who needs evicted? How do we clean this out of our customer base? And that's how we hope that it can become an incredibly successful business. And it's a great example of, we talk about this idea of native impact, and where people often are asking the question when they hear about an impact investment, what about the push and pull between, or the tug of war between the profit of an investment and the impact of an investment? People assume an inverse relationship, for using a math term. Mm-hmm. And Darkwatch is a great example of what we call a native impact company, where as their revenue goes up, it means more and more banks are debanking the trafficking industry. It's just directly in lockstep, which we kind of juxtapose against, thank you, Vip, against bolt-on impact, which is non-unique business models that have bolted philanthropy onto to create their impact, which is not throwing mud at bolt-on impact or buy one, give one models. It's just helping people differentiate that, like, the star of this industry is the Tom's Company. It's buying a shoe, giving a shoe, not throwing mud on it. It's just highlighting when they
limited.
Yeah,
it's
when
limited.
You give away a shoe.
You can only do
awesome,
so
but it's
much.
just a different style.
You can only do so
Yeah.
much, whereas native impact is unlimited, because the more it happens, the more you can do.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Do you want to tell about Deja Vu?
Yeah,
Go.
it's actually your find. I mean,
Yeah, I was just fortunate at a conference one day to be able to walk up to a young man that nobody else was kind of talking to at the moment, and I said, "Hey, what are you working on?" And he showed me some of it, that they're very early stages of Deja Vu, and I couldn't help but I started to weep. And I said, "Man, I think there's a chance that you could rescue a lot of people with this." And we became fast friends very fast.
You called our team at the Tebow group. You said, I don't care what they need, cash, connections, resources, get them whatever they need, because if this works the way that they hope it will, it could lead to a lot of rescues. And what you're seeing on your screen, this is a real life case study from this business. This isn't theoretical. These are two girls that were for sale on the internet. And we've tried to sanitize it as best we can. But we got a call from law enforcement saying, we need help. We need help finding where these girls are. And if we go to the next slide, in less than a half hour, just by matching the curtains and the bedspread, this company's focus is some of the most advanced image intelligence in the world. In fact, the lead image intelligence specialist at Apple said, if Apple had this technology, if Apple could have told you that was the same curtain and the same bedspread, they would have had a car on the road 2 years ago instead of scrapping their entire car project and the $6 billion they spent to try to get there. But literally, in less than a half hour, this company was able to match the curtains and the bedspread that you see and know exactly what hotel these girls were in, turn that over to local law enforcement, and in less than 3 hours total, those girls were rescued by local law enforcement. And by the way, this is not overseas. This was in Tennessee. This is in our backyard. It happens every day.
And if you extrapolate that out, the excitement that I feel and the chance to see, I mean, it's what you saw as soon as you engaged with the technology. You got really excited. Like, a lot of girls could get rescued.
Yes.
And kids. Yeah.
And I still feel
Can I share something real quick to just give everyone an idea that's listening? So Deja Vu is a great example of market opportunity, product market fit that also has massive market fit to help in anti-trafficking and anti-exploitation. Walmart has so many issues with their SKUs and mapping them, and the water bottle has to be placed just perfectly for someone to see it. This technology solves that.
Yeah,
There are so many market opportunities for this technology that they're already moving into.
Scott, I like this example. Walmart's robots on the shelves, they know this is bubbly water, but it's really hard for them to tell that this is the same thing or this or this. And this technology would solve all of that.
That's right. And so that is an example of the thinking that we're utilizing here. These companies, whether directly impacted with a profitable opportunity to fight or an indirect opportunity to both utilize their technology for trafficking and for-profit opportunities, is a massive win for native impact. Because I look at this as billions of dollars of profit is like the lifeblood of businesses. It's also the lifeblood of what this portfolio needs to be reinvesting into this fight, right? That's the beauty of what we can do here. And so that's why it's so critical to have nonprofit, government, and for-profit come together very, very strategically to make these things happen. So we're trying to find the best in the game in all these different theories of change. I don't know how much you want to dive into that, Wes, but go ahead. I know you're going to talk about it.
Safe too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
think that'll be pretty cool too.
Yeah. Do you want to describe it?
Sure. So I should say but as we should be aware now that when our sons and daughters, boys and girls go online to play games, go online to chat with friends, that there are people that are viewing, that are watching with the goal not to do good. And I'm just going to be careful with the words in case whoever's watching, but with the goal to maybe groom, the goal to lure, the goal to meet up somewhere, the goal to harm. And Game Safe and what David has created there is so cool because it is a way to help protect boys and girls and be able to alert mom or dad of when someone is trying to locate, when someone's trying to identify, when someone's trying to meet up, when someone's using bad images in all of these different ways. And there's a million things we could get into, but it really is a way to keep boys and girls safe by also letting mom and dad be mom and dad and be protective. And I think it's just something that could help so many families. And there's so many other areas we can get into where this technology is so cool, but it really is a way that we think could help a lot of kids stay safe.
It's another great example of our desire is to see Game Safe go to millions of kids, which would be an incredibly successful business. But in lockstep, it would mean millions of kids had their parents were being equipped to protect them.
That's right.
And we won't even go into the data potential when we go start strategizing with millions of parents informing us of how to catch the bad guys. It gets really, really fun. But what I want to highlight is that deep integration between we have a chance to grow wealth in lockstep with impact. It's not actually competing with how you give it away. I imagine if you give it away on this mission, you'll actually be more excited about giving it away. If you grow it on this mission, you'll be more excited about giving it on this mission. But it's really competing with the other ways of growing wealth. It's not competing with the other ways of giving wealth.
Yeah,
if that makes
agreed.
sense. So
let me add one last thing to that. With Game Safe specifically, David, we met randomly here in Arizona and then brought him into Clapham and Eagle. But when he explained everything to me, we immediately knew that we had to bring this technology to bear because of so many of the gaming engines and so many of the chat apps that have so much of this predatory content and grooming content going on. Well, for those of you listening, at our last event, what we found out from some of our, like Amy Chapman and some of our legal firms that are fighting this, they're getting asked by big tech and big gaming and all these companies that they're working with. We don't have solutions for this. We have committed capital, billions of dollars, for instance, $2 billion TikTok commits to this. They're asking the lawyers, what do they do? Who do we give this to? Where do we put this? We have the answer now, right? So this is why this acceleration model with investment, nonprofit, and government together can help us all work together. And it took all of those three coming together to get these things through. And so that's the point of what we're trying to explain to you guys. Like you're voting with your dollars either way. You're voting with your values either way. So it's probably a good time to tell those in the chat, say, put me in, coach, again.
Love it.
Where we keep talking.
Put me in, coach. Hey, should we, while we still have time, before we take everybody's evening too much, should we answer some questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah, I think just a couple of logistics. Some of you have asked, how do I know this is the right type of fund for me? And one of the things we always want people to understand, anytime you're dealing with a private investment or venture capital, it's not something that's very liquid. Once you put your dollars in, you can't just walk in a week later and get those dollars back. We have to wait till those companies grow from baby companies into big companies, and then they sell or they go public. At that point, there's a cash infusion, and then cash gets paid out to investors. So for some of you, a private investment might be a very new thing. We just always want to be cautious about that. We hate surprises when it comes to money. The other thing I would say is this is this fund is specifically designed for what are called accredited investors. And so those are investors that meet a certain threshold. I think it's a little bit silly. The way the government structures it, they say you have to already be at a certain level of wealth to be able to participate in the most exciting investments and the investments that have the most potential growth. So it's very backwards, but it's the rules. We're very grateful. One of the friends of Eagle Freedom, Wes will tell you about in a moment, has actually set up an opportunity for people that still want to get in the game, but maybe don't qualify that way, to be able to treat it more like an actual charity vehicle. Did you want to share about that? And then we'll turn it over to questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So our friend Rachel McDonough, and Vip, you could try to pull her up if she's available to describe it, is a financial advisor, and a group of the Eversource financial advisors came together to fund what's called a donor advised fund. It's basically a mini foundation just dedicated to the Eagle Freedom Fund. And that allows anybody to give into that. That is parting with it, like philanthropically, to be cycled through these impactful investments. And it looks like, Rachel, you're able to come into the presenter here. Do you want to describe that briefly?
Sure. Can you hear me?
You can.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, y'all. So we had, my husband and I actually had the desire for quite a while to be investors in Eagle Freedom Fund. And I remember just looking at him yesterday and saying, I just hate that we're not invested personally in this. I'm a big believer in advisors taking personal capital and putting it into things like this first, and then having the ability to just influence clients and invite clients into these opportunities. And so he and I just looked at each other. We're like, we have to do something. How can we get this done? Like, we don't have tons of surplus cash right now on hand. But inside of a donor advised fund, the minimums to invest in Eagle Freedom are a lot lower, at $25,000 instead of $100,000. And then beyond that, we just put together a donor advised fund that would be open to even smaller amounts. Like if somebody has $5,000 or $1,000 that they want to put into Eagle Freedom Fund with philanthropic charitable dollars, we now have a solution where we can just aggregate and pool those smaller amounts together and cumulatively take a big investment together and take a stand for how we want to deploy capital.
It's such a cool idea. Thank you and Mickey and just amazing people at Eversource. And I have to honor Rachel as well. She called me out from the stage at Kingdom Advisors 2 years ago. She knew that we were talking about a Freedom Fund and said, "You guys have to launch this."
I love it. That's amazing.
She was one of the catalytic voices that said, "This must exist. We know it's on your heart, and we desperately want it to exist." So thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, good.
Thank you. Wes, if I can throw some questions your way that have come in through the chat. One of those, people want to know, how many companies have we already invested in?
We have 7 companies already in the portfolio, and then we've got another 20 that we've identified. We think the portfolio should land between 15 and 20 companies. So that's diversification or going into a series of companies is one of they call it the only free lunch on Wall Street. So we're getting away from single company risk to get into enough companies that we're diversified on our risk.
So there's 7 right now, goal to be at 15 or 20.
Yeah.
And how much is the fund actually trying to raise?
Our goal is $25 to $50 million. We can do an incredible amount of damage on that door that is propped open. At 25, we can just go faster and hit it harder at 50 million.
And how much should we raise to this point?
So far, we have 3 million. We have discussions on a $10 million investment that would carry us a long way. So we're despite the fact that we're only at 3, we are still optimistic that we can hit the 25 before the end of the year is when it closes finally. So
excellent. One of the questions we're seeing, how do you go about identifying and finding the companies to actually invest in?
I think that's the power of being part of a dense network. Like you just heard how GameSafe reached us. It was Scott had a passion for this issue. And basically by extension, Scott's network is our network, if I can say that, because you're on the hunt for people solving this issue. Deja Vu came because you were at a conference. You're on the hunt for solutions to this. We've been investing in this type of investment for 8 years now. And we've come to be known as software impact investors in the faith-driven space and even beyond. So we get 5,000 to 7,000 inbounds a year and have a system for vetting through those. But it's a treasure when you have somebody like a Scott or a Tim or a Tommy who are out there. You're always watching for companies so that's what's so special about being part of. There's about 100 people in this network that meet a couple times a year that effectively are the eyes hunting for what is the tech that could solve human trafficking.
Always.
Yeah. And I can say this, you would never say this, but we also have companies that find us because they know this is something Tim and Demi are so passionate about, this fight. They want that influence behind them. And so, I get contacted by those companies often. Just to give people, again, I know you talked about minimums, but just to reiterate, if somebody wanted to invest, what's the normal minimum and what's the alternative route for them to be able to invest?
So the normal minimum is 100,000. That can be from an individual, individual or a couple. It can be through an IRA. We're on the Fidelity platform and the Schwab platform, or a family foundation. If you want to go to a smaller minimum, it would be through a donor advised funds. So we're on the National Christian Foundation platform. We're on the Impact Foundation platform, and there we can take down to 25,000. And that's not trying to be small-minded about it. It's just that we only have 99 slots in this fund, and they're filling up. So we have to set that minimum.
Absolutely. And if somebody wants to go to the next step, what is that process?
We're going to start by typing in "put me in, coach."
Yes. So they type "put me in, coach," which we've seen. I don't think everybody can see it because it's going to host and panelists. Yeah. But I've seen dozens and dozens of those. So we're very grateful.
Yes.
But once that happens, what will the next steps be after that?
So you'll receive access to a data room where you're able to see the audits and the backgrounds of the managers and the track record of performance. We're super thankful that our first fund's been growing at 22% per year for going on 8 years. Our second fund has been growing at about 12% per year. Good numbers that with this type of impact are real growth. And you can dig into those numbers in the audited financials and things like that. But you also get an invitation to fill in the subscription document, which is where you're actually saying, hey, I want to be part of this fund and I'm committing to this dollar amount.
Excellent. So, what other questions do we have?
I'll tell you why they're looking at more questions. To Scott, just want to say thanks for your heart. Vip, Wes, thanks for pulling so much of this team together. Wes, thanks for the courage to take on this fight. It's hard, it's daunting, it's a lot, and thanks for that courage. Courage
Yeah.
is doing something because you don't have fear. It's doing it even in spite of the fear. So thanks for saying yes to it.
Thank you all
Yeah.
for your partnership. It means a lot.
Wes,
I think it's worth saying one thing because I saw a couple questions come through of like, how are you vetting? How are you looking at these? So
Sure.
I think it's worth talking about the accelerator for a second and what it means for the companies. So this is not a strategy where we're just deploying capital and sending them on their way. Okay. This is the dense network that Wes was talking about. So when we looked at this portfolio, it needs somewhat of a Y Combinator feel, right? Sorry, my camera just switched. It needs a Y Combinator feel where you're accelerating all of the companies in the network, finding them more deals, investors, revenue, employees, tech experts, consultants, policy experts. So what we're doing is we're being selective about the companies that come in this that are fighting, whether it's keeping kids safe on phone or helping law enforcement, in our theories of change that are going to come together to really fight this cause head on. And then we're bringing the 100 people together several times a year, like Wes was saying, to accelerate those companies, to solve their issues, whether it's tech issues, market fit issues, sales issues. And it's almost like this buffer around the business to help them scale quicker inside the portfolio. That's a really important thing to mention just because it's not a hangout group. It's fun because we're getting a lot done, right? It's fun because we're really helping each other thrive. So making connections with sales or network.
10x it. And I love it.
Our job at Clapham is it's a partner organization to help these companies 10x. Well, 100x really, just to thrive and get them the right connections to scale and fix their issues along the way. Because as tech gets built specifically, it needs to iterate, it needs to pivot, it needs to have like different types of people looking at it through another lens. And I think my most encouraging part of when we were together a few months ago was when all of the company founders got together and said, I feel more encouraged right now than ever before.
Yeah.
I feel like there's more people behind me. There's more energy. I got so many problems solved. I would never have found this otherwise, which is why this is such a powerful combination, especially with the foundation, with the Tim Tebow Foundation, right? We were able to bring lobbyists and nonprofits and a voice sales network. Like that's the power of this dense network.
And Scott, it's such a good point. I'm so glad you brought it up before we close. And I know we're getting close to the end, but I do think it's such a good point. It's not just investing in these companies to say, go do good. No, it's this group of people that aren't just like financially invested, but invested in so many ways where it does feel like a team. It really does. When we get together, like so many of them, these entrepreneurs and engineers and creators, they've never had that support. And it feels so good. It feels like a team. And I've got to play on some good ones and some not so good. It feels like a great team, but it's one of the first times I would say in a business sense that the most like a team would feel in a business sense. I get to be a part of that in the nonprofit world and the team world, but on the business side, man, it's like this is a team. This is a team that's in it for the mission. Yes, you want an ROI, but look at, hey, you could meet with him, help him. You could meet with him. Hey, I know this guy. And so it's enhancing everybody. And it's not a 2 + 2 is 4. No, we don't play an addition. It's a multiplication. Yeah. And I just think that's one of the easiest ways to describe it.
It's true. There's a powerful vetting element to that as well, because when you have 100 friends, it's hard to get into the Eagle Freedom Fund without somebody like we've had some very real vetting experiences where we have some of the best systems in the world. Like you've gotten to see, Tommy, about how we vet from a financial business perspective. But then there's another element of we have 100 friends who probably know people from your previous life, basically. So it's
that's always been true.
Yeah. And that's actually where, if we're candid, that's where you lose money in venture capital, is not the guy that can't really pitch well. It's the person who, or woman that really should have gotten vetted out from maybe they shouldn't be leading a company perspective. And that's part of the power of the network. So.
Yeah. So Wes, couple of last questions, and I think we got to wrap up, but a couple of questions on, you're trying to hit it. What's the payout timeline that you're looking at? Can you share much about, ROI so far or projected? Like those are a couple of the questions coming through.
Yeah, think 5 to 10 years down the road is a really good mental model. So, I like to help people look at the pros and cons of a venture capital investment. If we do our job right, we should do a great job of incredible impact and great financial return. 20 plus is where we would want it to be, but it's very liquid. So think, if you need this capital inside of, call it 7 years, then it's probably not the right thing for you. Or find a different bucket if you had multiple buckets where oh, I don't need it for 10 plus years. Then I kind of say, we call it the liquidity premium, get paid for locking your money up for 10 years. Don't go into something that you can sell tomorrow and miss out on the liquidity premium. So think 6, 7, 8 years down the road, if you're able to look at it and say, oh, I definitely don't need it for that time frame, that's the type of time frame that we're looking at. And it tends to be what actually happens. The way the money comes back to you is if there's 20 companies, we start selling those companies, or they start listing on a public exchange. So it's lumpy. Maybe in year 3, there's a nice payout of 20% of the fund, and then there's nothing in year 4, and then year 5, there's like 40% of the fund is paid out, nothing, and then you get a big hit, and like the whole investment comes back again. It's but we can't predict for you. Like, you can't do your financial planning based on when we're going to sell companies, because I have no idea when GameSafe's going to sell. I hope it's huge, but it might be 2 years from now, and it might be 20 years, or like it's a 10-year fund. We'll find liquidity earlier than that. Yeah. But just trying to give you a sense of what it feels like of these kind of pops that are bunched into that 5 to 10 year time frame. Is that a decent way to describe a venture fund?
Yep, absolutely. We're incredibly grateful. We want to respect everyone's time. I have never in my life had this high of a percentage of people stick around the whole time. So y'all are doing something right. We're very grateful to everybody that joined in. And you want to close us out?
Sure. I would just say thank you. Thanks for caring about this issue. Wes, again, I know I mentioned it. Thanks for leading this issue. Scott, thanks for your heart in all the different areas. Vip, just appreciate the whole team. If you guys don't mind, I'd love to actually close us in prayer. It probably doesn't happen a whole lot of calls, but we don't mind. Jesus, we love you. We thank you that you love us. We thank you that you love every single one of these lives that are put in such a hard position. We know that you love them more than we do. We know that you are near to the brokenhearted, and we just ask that we would be too, that we would have the willingness, the courage to go to the hard places, that you would give us the strategy, the wisdom, the discernment to do what you want us to do, and the courage to follow through with it. We just thank you for all the strategic minds that you have placed here, all the giftings you have placed here. We thank you for all of those that are deciding right now to be a part of it. We thank you for the plan and the purpose you have for them. And we really just ask and pray that we would be able to push back evil, that we would be able to move the needle, that we would be able to make a difference, that we would be able to bring so many lives that are stuck in places of darkness and bring them into a place of true faith, hope, and love, where they could experience it. They could be loved. They could understand what real love looks like. They could understand what real hope looks like. They could understand what real protection looks like. And we just ask that we could be able to make a difference. Thanks for loving us, even in spite of us, and we are so grateful. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for the time. Thank you for the heart for this. Thank you for the heart for those that God has placed on our heart, and we're grateful He's placed on your heart too. We look forward to hopefully connecting, meeting, and making a difference together. And who knows, maybe one day we'll be talking about this in heaven, and that would be pretty freaking cool.
Let me end with what my mom told me when she dropped me off for college. Well, my dad, he dropped me off. He gave me a $50 bill, and he shook my hand, and he just said, "Tip well." That was my dad's advice. Some of the best life advice ever, if you think about generosity. My mom gave me a hug, and before she started crying, she said, "If it doesn't point to Jesus, what's the point?" And I think that's one of the most powerful things you could think of. So I think you just vote with your values here and put your money where that is. So just want to encourage you all, say a prayer right now. What's that amount that you feel like is right? And the investment is going to be great. I mean, we're excited about this on many levels for return. If you want to create a DAF, like an advised fund, and help out there, the return is the same way. You just get to redeploy it to other charities, right? And other things that you want to be giving to. You still get the return. So excited for you guys. Mom is always right. Thanks, David.
Love it.
Yeah, we love you guys. Thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank
and
you
we'll,
guys.
we'll talk
Thank
to
you all.
soon.
God bless y'all.